The laughter in Big Rig Haven dies the moment a grease-stained cap hits the floor, and the man who wears its scars stands up. Why would a single piece of cloth turn a rowdy truck stop ice-cold in seconds? Stick around, because that cap carries a secret no one in this room is ready for. Sheets of rain whipped across the windshield as Mac Harlan eased his 18-wheeler off Interstate 74 and nosed it beneath the glowing red signage of Big Rig Haven. Wind rattled every loose panel on the massive Kenworth, and thunder rolled like far-off artillery. Mac killed the engine, but he waited a moment, listening to the diesel tick down and the storm batter the cab, before he finally reached for the frayed billfold on the passenger seat. A cap the color of sun-bleached jungle mud, the airborne patch ghosted by time. He turned it in those scar-scribed hands, then settled it on his knee and exhaled. Inside the truck stop diner, lights in a wan green haze. Country rock crackled low from a ceiling speaker long past its prime. The place was thick with the smell of fryer grease, hot coffee, and the soaked clothing of people who spent their lives between horizons. Forks clinked on porcelain. Laughter ricocheted off chrome napkin dispensers. Mac shouldered the glass door open. Rainwater revered off his jacket and splashed onto the checkered linoleum. A younger trucker whistled under his breath, not at Mac's size, but at the deep, mile-carved lines on the man's face, like continental divides. Mac offered no greeting. He simply walked the long aisle to the counter, pulled himself onto a vinyl stool, and set that cap, deliberate, ceremonial, directly beside his cup of black. 2 seats down, Derek Morris, 26, still smeared with axle grease, stopped drumming his ratchet on the countertop. The mechanic's eyes flicked to the cap, then to Mac's weather-cracked expression. Amusement curled Derek's mouth. "Nice prop," he said, voice pitched so the nearby tables couldn't miss it. "Flea market special?" Mac didn't flinch. He kept stirring sugar he didn't need into coffee he barely tasted. Rain hammered the roof. Derek leaned in, elbow sliding through a puddle of spilled cola. "Come on, old-timer. Tell me you didn't buy that thing to pick up sympathy discounts." He grabbed the cap before Mac's fingers even rose. 99 cents on a clearance rack, right? A couple of rookie drivers at a corner booth, Ricky Klein and Lonnie Watts, turned, snickering like children released at recess. Ricky still had that new license glow. Lonnie wore a ball cap bearing a streaming service logo, irony lost on him. Ricky shouted across, "Yo, Derek, make sure it's real silk. Guy looks like he only rolls in luxury." Laughter spiked in volume, clattering silverware. A line cook paused mid-flip of a burger, but no one intervened. Cruelty traveled fast in closed quarters when boredom stirred the pot. Derek vaulted from his stool and lobbed the cap to Ricky. "Let's test whether it's bulletproof." The airborne relic spun, scattering droplets as if still catching rotor wash from above a war zone. Mac rose slowly, deliberately. The stool squealed, scraping the floor like a warning shot. Ricky fumbled the catch. The cap slapped onto the edge of a bucket of fryer oil left for disposal, then slid from the rim into a slick puddle of grease. The embroidered airborne wings soaked dark, almost black. Silence collapsed the room. Forks hovered in mid-bite. Even the jukebox track seemed to mute itself, as though ashamed. Mac stood stone still, staring at the cap on the floor, his throat working once, twice. His voice, when it finally dislodged, came out low enough to make every patron lean in. "Pick it up." Ricky swallowed, but bravado was a cheap drug. He forced a grin. "Buddy, it's ruined." A boot heel thudded on the doorway threshold. It was a big sound, final like a gavel. Heads swiveled. Cole Brighton, the warehouse foreman, filled the entrance. 45, barrel-chested, sleeves rolled to reveal ranger-tattooed forearms. Rainwater sluiced off a shaved head and onto shoulders as wide as the doorframe. Cole scanned the freeze-frame tableau. The mechanic mid-laugh, the rookies half-standing, Mac rigid as a guard tower. He saw the cap on the floor. Something glinted behind a wall of controlled rage in his eyes. He walked, no rush, just heavy certainty, toward the puddle. Ricky instinctively stepped back like a kid caught painting over a highway sign. Cole crouched, lifted the cap from the grease with thumb and forefinger, treating it the way some men handle the torn page of scripture. He wiped it across the dry inside of his jacket. Then on a dish towel a waitress wordlessly handed him. Cole read the faint name on the inside band, Ink faded to the memory of ink. SGT, Daniel Mule Harris. He turned, gaze sweeping every face. You know what these colors are? His voice was steady, but it carried an edge that razored through the tension. This cap belonged to a man who burned a squad of insurgents out of a hellhouse in Fallujah. He got 6 men out, stayed to drag the 7th. A breath. Then he bled out waiting for evac, because the Black Hawk never made it. The rookies stared at their boots. Derek's face drained of smirk, replaced by a colorless shock. Somewhere in the kitchen, a timer dinged, but the cook didn't move. Cole turned to Mac. You were there. It wasn't quite a question, not quite an accusation. More a recognition. Mac met his gaze. Those eyes, dark as wet asphalt, held decades of engine hum and road hours. Yet behind them flickered a memory too searing for daylight. He didn't nod, didn't speak. Silence was answer enough. Cole laid the cap, carefully, reverently, onto the counter in front of Mac. A single drop of fryer grease trailed down the bill like false blood. Mac's fingers closed around it, and his shoulders sagged an inch, the way men only do when their load is briefly shared. Cole straightened, swiveled toward Derek first. You work the bay outside? Derek managed a croak. Yes, sir. You'll spend the rest of this shift cleaning every patch of grease in that garage. And you'll start with the puddle you just christened. Derek nodded so hard his cap fell off, and he scrambled to catch it. Cole's gaze pinned Ricky and Lonnie next. You boys think valor is a punchline? Coach Acquire Together's about to become your new hobby. Driver's lounge needs scrubbing. 5-hour job if you hustle. Lonnie gulped. Yes, sir. Good. Cole's voice softened half a shade as he faced Mac again. Coffee's on me. Mac inclined his head, a gesture bordering on thanks. He settled back onto his stool, the din around him shifting from charged silence to subdued clatter as people remembered how to move. The waitress poured a fresh mug for Mac. Her hands trembled just enough to reveal the adrenaline in the room. She lingered. He have family? The soldier. Mac's thumb stroked the edge of the cap. He had a sister, he said finally, each word scraped raw from somewhere deep. Back in Kansas. Nothing else. Cole dragged an empty stool between them, sat with elbows on the counter. Rain slanted sideways past the window behind him, lightning etching his silhouette in stop-motion white. You running freight east? He asked quietly. Mac sipped. Where the loads take me. Cole nodded. Mule's sister. She ever get the whole story? Mac's jaw ground. Not yet. Something unspoken passed between the two men. A ledger of debts unpaid, ghosts unlaid. Behind them, Derek was already on his knees with a bucket and rag, scrubbing the greasy puddle like it was an unpardonable stain on his own soul. Ricky and Lonnie shuffled toward the back hallway under the cook's watchful eye. The jukebox crackled back to life, spitting out an old Merle Haggard tune about broken heroes and dusty roads. Conversation resumed in careful murmurs, but eyes slid sideways at Mac, at Cole, at the cap, now resting safe if battered on the counter. Outside, thunder bellowed one last time before rolling onward, leaving the truck stop in a hush that felt like held breath. Mac lifted the cap and placed it on his head. It didn't fit quite right over the years of weathering, but it felt true. He took another swallow of black coffee, a bitter heat that anchored him to the present. Somewhere down the road, dawn would break. For tonight, though, the storm inside Big Rig Haven had already spent itself, leaving behind the kind of silence that forced everyone to hear their own heartbeat. And on that sodden night, with grease dripping into a bucket and apologies hanging unfinished in the air, the first mile of a different journey quietly clicked into gear. The rain had thinned to a mist that puckered the glass front of Big Rig Haven, washing the neon open 24 hours sign in bleeding pink. Inside, the midnight frenzy had ebbed to a hush. A tired waitress restocked sugar caddies. An ancient ceiling fan ticked like a metronome for empty tables. Mechanic Derek Morris knelt on the checkerboard floor, shoulders burning from an hour of scrubbing grease. His rag was the color of used motor oil, and the bucket beside him reflected a face he hardly recognized. 26, yes, but tonight he felt 12 and shamed. At the counter, Mac Harlan nursed lukewarm coffee, the battered 82nd Airborne cap resting beside the mug like a relic on an altar. Next to him, Warehouse foreman Cole Brighton sat broad-backed, fingers laced around ceramic the size of a soup bowl. Their silence was not awkward. It was earned. Two men who'd learned talk couldn't cauterize every wound. Derek stood, wiped his palms on his coveralls, and approached. "Sir, Mr. Harlan." His voice cracked. "What I did, mocking the cap, that was cheap." He swallowed. "I served stateside National Guard. Tornado cleanup, wildfire mop-ups. Never deployed. Always felt I hadn't proved anything, so I overcompensated." Mac eyed him, his weathered face unreadable. "Uniform doesn't make the man. Choices do." "I want to make one now," Derek blurted. "Let me help you haul." He jerked a thumb toward the service bays. "I can keep the rig rolling." Cole leaned in, his voice gravel-soft. "We leave at 5. Hill country's hard on brakes. You ride shotgun, wrench what needs wrenching. That's how you repay a cap." Derek's relief looked almost like pain, but he nodded. Cole reached inside his jacket and produced a padded envelope yellowed with years. "Army mailed me mules effects, dog tags, commendations. Couldn't face them till now. Figured his sister should have the lot." He laid it beside Mac's coffee. Mac answered by sliding out a thinner envelope, its edges translucent from 15 years in a breast pocket. Caroline Harris was scrawled across the front. "Mule wrote this the night before Fallujah. Asked me to deliver it if I never found the nerve." The waitress glided up, refilled their cups, and set down pie nobody had ordered. "Blackberry'll be gone by dawn," she said, gentle as rain on tin. She sensed confession in the air and retreated. Derek studied the two envelopes, brow furrowed. "You think she's still in Kansas after all this time?" "Land keeps its people," Mac said, "even when they think they're keeping it." A door creaked. Ricky Klein and Lonnie Watts shuffled in, their bleach-stung eyes and red fingers proof of their penance in the driver lounge showers. Ricky cleared his throat. "Place is spotless, sir." The sir aimed at Cole but landed on Mac. "Sorry about the cap." Cole only nodded. "Apologies tomorrow, when you choose not to repeat today." Mac added, "Rest up. Road's unforgiving if you're not." The rookies shuffled off, chastened. The clock over the cash register flipped to 3:47. Mac drained the last of his coffee. "I'll check tires," he murmured to Cole. The foreman stood too, his joints popping like rifle bolts. "I'll top the tanks, load spare belts." Derek hovered. "Where do you want me?" "Bay 4, Cole said. "Crawl under that Kenworth. Anything cracked, change it. Anything frayed, replace it. GPS fails in the mountain pass, but fresh hoses don't." Derek broke into a run, boots squeaking through the now-clean diner, leaving rag and shame behind. Cole paused at the vestibule. Rain beaded on his bald scalp under the buzzing porch light. He studied Mac. "Ready." Mac placed Mule's cap on his own head. Grease stains remained, battle scars of a different sort. Readiness ended in Fallujah. What's left is debt. Cole accepted that like gospel and stepped into the drizzle. Alone, Mac traced the cap's frayed brim. The jukebox kicked up a pedal steel lament about brothers never coming home. In the glass, he caught a phantom reflection, Mule's crooked grin hovering over his shoulder. He touched the brim in a silent salute, pocketed the letter, and headed for the bays. Outside, diesel fumes mingled with petrichor. Lights pooled on wet asphalt, and Derek's laughter echoed as he discovered a split coolant hose. Work he understood, penance he could pay. Mac inhaled, tasting both the road ahead and the years behind. Every mile between here and Kansas was one more chance to trade silence for truth, guilt for grace. He started walking, each step measured and steady, as though the distance were no longer a burden but a promise finally coming due. The Kenworth rumbled out of Big Rig Haven at 5:02, its headlights carving silver tunnels through the lingering drizzle. Mac settled into rhythm, 1200 RPM, 8th gear, while the truck's wipers metronomed the lull between day and whatever came next. Beside him, Derek rode shotgun, his grease-black nails drumming a nervous cadence on the door panel. In the sleeper, Cole had wedged himself onto the lower bunk, arms folded, boots still on, a watchdog grabbing what rest he could. Dawn bled slow over Illinois farmland, pale gold filtering through mist that made silos look like ghost towers. The dash clock flipped to 6:17 when Derek finally spoke. "Truck smells like burnt coffee and old vinyl," he muttered, as if sensory data could steady him. Mac grunted. "That's called authenticity." He reached for the CB mic and checked channel 19. Static. Then a timid voice crackled through. "Breaker? Big dog, you copy?" Mac pressed the transmit button. "Go ahead. It's, Ricky. Just rolled out eastbound. Wanted to, wish you safe miles." Derek winced, expecting sarcasm. But Ricky continued, his sincerity thick as fog. "Kept thinking about that cap. My granddad fought in Nam. I never respected the ghosts he carried. Guess I do now." Mac's jaw loosened a fraction. 10-4, rookie. Keep the shiny side up. He hung the mic, and for a pocket of miles, the cab held nothing but engine drone and the faint snore of a sleeping foreman. By 9 o'clock, the rain returned. Not polite drizzle but hard, slanted spears. Visibility shrank to a smeared postcard. At mile marker 212, Mac eased onto the shoulder. The wipers couldn't keep pace. From the sleeper, Cole sat up. "Roads icing farther north. We detour south or chain up." Derek scanned truck stop weather on his phone, his thumb flicking anxious. Past conditions dropping to 28 degrees. Black ice specials. Mac stared through the windshield, rain tracing erratic Morse across the glass. "We stay the course. Mule's sister isn't moving south to accommodate us." Cole eyed the driver's profile, calculating risk versus debt, but nodded. "Then let's chain." They stepped into the storm. Needles of sleet stung exposed skin while they wrestled snow chains over drive tires. Derek's breathing clouded in the cold air. Still, his hands moved sure around cam locks, skill trumping fear. Back in the cab, Mac reined the rig onto the interstate at 45 miles per hour. Trucks ahead appeared then vanished like freight ghosts. Around mile marker 239, a box truck skidded sideways, jackknifing across both lanes. Mac's reflex was pure muscle memory. Clutch, stab brake, countersteer. The trailer fishtailed but the chains bit. 35 tons of steel and produce wobbled, groaned, then tucked back behind the cab. Derek's heart thundered in his ears. Cole, braced between seats, slammed a fist on the dash, an exorcism of adrenaline. "Everybody breathe," Mac ordered, though his pulse galloped too. "We're alive. That's the metric." Noon dragged them under clearing skies. They stopped at a rest area carved into rolling woodland. Cole bought 3 coffees and a bag of jerky. Sitting on a picnic bench slick with meltwater, he unwrapped the padded envelope. Metal ribbons caught sunlight, scarlet, cobalt, and blood black. "I froze when this arrived," he confessed. "Couldn't open it. Felt like stealing valor from a corpse I never met." Mac pulled Mule's letter from his jacket. "I opened this too many times. Read every line till they blurred. Still couldn't deliver it." Derek watched, steam curling from his cup. "Fear cuts both ways, huh? One of owning, one of letting go." Mac studied the mechanic, saw a mirror he didn't enjoy. "What are you running from, kid?" Derek kicked gravel. "My mother died last year. Cancer. I was chaining tires in a snowstorm while she took her last breath. I've been hiding in Greece and jokes ever since." Cole nodded, slow. "Then maybe you're on this run for both of you." They sat in quiet allegiance while the breeze rifled the letter and rattled metal cases like tin prayers. Back on the road, afternoon sun flickered through bare-branched trees, strobing the cab in gold and shadow. At mile marker 301, red and blue strobes bloomed behind them. "State trooper," Derek muttered. Mac guided the Kenworth onto gravel. Officer Hernandez approached, broad-shouldered, eyes sharp. "Routine safety check, gentlemen." His gaze snagged on the airborne cap. Respect flashed before duty masked it. "Iraq?" he asked. "Afghanistan, Iraq, and one ugly summer in Lebanon," Mac replied. Hernandez tipped his hat. "I did Ramadi 06. He inspected chains, tires, logbook. Everything passed. Before returning paperwork, he pulled a folded photo from his wallet. 3 Marines posing in desert dusk. One wore the same airborne cap. "Your friend's brothers saved my fire team. Never knew their names until now." Cole lifted the envelope. "Sergeant Daniel Harris. Call sign Mule." Hernandez's jaw tightened. Then I owe him my badge. He snapped a salute crisp as frost. Mac returned it through the open window. The trooper waved them on, his cruiser lights escorting them a mile before fading. Evening bled orange across Missouri's hill country when the CB crackled again. Ricky's voice, steadier this time. Big dog, you still rolling? Rolling, Mac confirmed. Just past exit 44. There's a roadside diner called Maple Fork. Best meatloaf you'll ever meet. Thought maybe you could use a hot meal. Derek grinned, his hunger rumbling. Cole shrugged, the decision fell to the driver. Copy that, Mac said. Meatloaf sounds righteous. He flicked the blinker and guided the rig into the exit lane. As the truck slowed, twilight revealed a panorama of distant farmland washed in ember light. Derek exhaled, his shoulders unclenching for the first time in hours. Cole glanced at the letter and medals cradled on the dash. 200 miles to Kansas tomorrow. Mac watched the horizon swallow the sun. And a lifetime to close, he murmured, easing the Kenworth toward glowing diner windows that promised warmth, pie, and the fragile silence 3 men still needed before confronting dawn. Gray dawn slid over the parking lot of Maple Fork Diner, gilding puddles and outlining the Kenworth in pale pewter. Inside the cab, Mac exhaled a single cloud of breath, turned the key, and the engine answered with a low, confident rumble. Derek was already belted in, his toolbox wedged between his boots. Cole folded the road atlas on the sleeper and climbed forward. The cafe's cook lifted a mug in the window as they rolled onto the westbound on-ramp of Highway 36. Kansas met them just after 9. Wheat stubble glittered with frost, and the sky felt enormous enough to swallow regret. Nobody talked. The silence was a pocket they all needed. At 11:42, the green mile sign for Junction City, 2 miles flashed past the windshield. Cole snapped out of his doze and pointed to a 2-lane heading south toward scattered farmsteads. Caroline's place should be 5 miles down, he murmured, his voice hoarse from unused words. A minute later Mac eased onto a gravel shoulder outside a white farmhouse flanked by barren cottonwoods. Wind rattled a sheet metal weathercock. Otherwise the world waited. Mac killed the engine. None of them moved. Derek finally forced the door and climbed out, his boots crunching on gravel. He circled to Mac's side and opened the driver's door. If you can face Fallujah every night, you can face this porch. He started up the path, his heart hammering louder than the distant diesel tick down. The screen door squeaked open before he reached it. Caroline Harris, late 30s, her hair threaded with daylight, wearing a faded for H sweatshirt, stepped onto the stoop. Her eyes clocked the strangers, then locked on the cap in Mac's hands. Color drained from her cheeks. I know that cap, she whispered. Derek cleared his throat, his words tripping. Ma'am, my name's Derek Morris. I was part of something foolish and these men pulled me straight. We came to bring you what was owed. Mac walked forward, every step deliberate, and removed the cap. I drove with your brother, he said, his voice low but steady. Daniel saved men, including me, 15 years ago. He asked me to get this letter to you. He offered the fragile envelope as though it might shatter. Caroline didn't take it at first. Tears pinned her where she stood. Then she reached with both hands, her thumb tracing her brother's writing. I thought the army lost his effects, she breathed. Cole stepped up and produced the padded envelope of medals and tags. Some things get buried in warehouses and hearts. We're done hiding. Inside the farmhouse kitchen, sunlight pooled on linoleum worn translucent at the sink. The walls were a shrine, a framed graduation photo of a lanky boy in dress blues, a news clipping about Fallujah survivors, a dusty acoustic guitar missing 2 strings. Caroline laid the letter on the table, her fingers trembling, and slid a paring knife under the seal. Mac stared at the floorboards while she read. When her voice broke on the line, tell Mom I'm still lousy at writing home, but I'm good at keeping promises, he lifted his eyes. Caroline pressed the letter to her chest, tears streaking unashamed. You kept your promise, she said. I kept it late, Mac answered, his throat raw. And I'm sorry for every mile between. She shook her head. Late is not lost. Cole set the medals beside the letter, dog tags chiming like tiny bells. He earned these, and so did you, every family does. Caroline picked up the Bronze Star and turned it under the light. I never knew what happened. Command said, classified. Now I have words. That's more than medals. She looked at Cole. You served with him? Should have. Cole admitted, his voice a rasp. I was reassigned hours before the convoy left. I've been carrying the what if ever since. Caroline surprised him with a gentle smile. Then carry this instead. She reached to the mantel and lifted an old brass compass. Its glass chipped. Dan wrote you were the only man who never got lost on patrol. He'd want you to keep finding the way. Cole accepted the compass, his jaw working hard against emotion. Derek stood awkwardly by the fridge until Caroline gestured to a chair. Sit, soldier. He half laughed, half sobbed. Not a soldier, ma'am. Just a mechanic trying to torque my life tight again. She poured him coffee. Machines or hearts, same rule. Catch the fault early and nothing shears. An hour later, they gathered beneath the tallest cottonwood at the road's edge. Cole drove 2 fence posts into a cross. Derek sanded the wood smooth, and Caroline tied mules' dog tags around the center. Max slid the cap onto the top, grease stains and all. He stepped back, his palms open, as if releasing weight. The CB in the Kenworth crackled. Ricky's voice, bright with urgency. Big dog. Convoy coming up on your 6. Figured the sergeant deserved a proper send-off. Moments later, a parade of rigs. Ricky's, Lonnie's, 3 more anonymous haulers who'd heard the chatter, crested the hill. They parked along the shoulder, hazard lights winking like votive candles. Drivers climbed out, forming a loose line beside the makeshift memorial. Mac keyed his mic, all units. Thanks for riding shotgun. Static replied. Then one by one the air filled with air horns, a rolling cord that rattled fence wire and startled crows into flight. Caroline pressed the letter against her heart, tears glittering like morning dew. When the last horn faded, Derek produced a black Sharpie and signed his name on the cross's base. Cole added his below. Ricky and the other drivers followed. Caroline handed the marker to Mac. He hesitated, then wrote only 2 words beneath the rest, still rolling. She stepped close, slipped the cap from the cross, and placed it back in his hands. Dan would say keep it with you. Roads need reminders. Mac's fingers closed around the brim. Sunlight edged through the branches, laying gold over all of them. For the first time, guilt felt less like ballast and more like fuel. Derek shouldered his toolbox. Loads waiting, boss. Cole tapped the compass in his pocket. Northwest to Denver tonight. Then who knows? Mac turned to Caroline. You ever need a haul, you call Channel 19, ask for Big Dog. Whole highway will answer. She laughed, a clear, bright sound, and hugged each man in turn. Safe miles. The convoy engines fired up, deep and steady. Mac climbed into the Kenworth and set the cap on the dash where morning light could polish its battered threads. He pulled onto the road. The other rigs fell in behind, a steel procession stretching west toward a horizon wide enough for second chances. In the mirror, Caroline stood at the cottonwood, the letter fluttering in her hand like a white flag finally answered. The dog tags glinted once more, then vanished in distance as the sun claimed the day and the highway opened, mile after mile, toward whatever grace waited around the next bend. This journey reminds us that respect isn't worn, it's earned, mile by mile. If you were in Mac's boots, would you carry that cap, or finally lay it to rest? Tell us below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more road-tested stories that hit straight to the heart.